1, 2, 3, 4.
Composition programs aren't your grandmother's composition program anymore.
Currently, what it means to write is that you have to be able to understand what does my audience need, what do they want, how do I analyze this particular rhetorical situation, and then think about all of the possible means that I have for reaching those rhetorical goals.
It's a matter of providing students all the tools they need to make meaning, and then teaching them how to choose from among those tools to make meaning effectively.
Here's my audience. Here's what I need to tell my audience. Now, what is the best way of doing that? All means possible.
When Aristotle says we should use all available means to make meaning, to communicate, to persuade, when I think of that quote, I think of all available modalities of expression.
So for me, a multimodal text is seeing how various modes of communication can interact with one another.
To think about making meaning in different channels.
Using multiple modalities to communicate or to compose.
Using audio or oral channels of communication, moving image or video channels of communication like animation, still image or photography, alphabetic. All these are modes of expression, modes of making meaning.
Going through the analysis process, the rhetorical analysis process of trying to understand what mode it will serve my purposes best in a given context.
In the 21st century world, where communications have to cross cultural boundaries, geopolitical boundaries, linguistic boundaries, I think if a student is operating in those environments, they're going to have to make meaning in a number of different semiotic channels in order to make themselves understood. Where teachers are going to prepare students for that kind of world, I think we better teach them different ways of making meaning, and then teach them how to make the choices from among different modalities according to the affordances and according to the rhetorical context that they're operating within. And then I think students will have the tools necessary to accomplish their task of communication.
Some of the values that I see in asking them to compose, one is their career. I think that this will really benefit them in the future, ranging from the sciences to the humanities to government, we read these texts all the time, and so teaching students to be more critical of them is one approach, but when you teach them to compose, they become critical in a different way.
The multimodal is that you're accessing more available learners. Kind of from a disability studies perspective, but I realized I was doing multimodal long before I came to disability studies, and it could be because I grew up, very hard of hearing, deaf for all intents and purposes. So even though I'm in English and I'm a text person and I'm a writer, I visually process the world. It's my primary mode of learning, and realizing actually more at a kind of basic level within myself that I was always happier in classes where there was more visual interaction with text. So if I love English and love teaching literature, but I also really like the visual, that has to mean there are other students out there that like it too.
My contention is that creativity now is as important in education as literacy, and we should treat it with the same status.
Students' investment, the students put way more time into these than they report putting into print essays. It can become something that's aesthetic, artistic, and really pleasing, not just to the audience, but to them. Mm-hmm. And so they're more invested in it. Students share their projects with their family and their friends or their friends on Facebook, and in ways that they never did with their written essays.
and finding a way to fit it in, because if you assign a multimodal assignment, you can't just throw students into the deep end and expect them to figure it out, and they don't all have the same access to resources.
The teachers will come to the table with a suite of habits that they don't even think about. They're the teacher, and they know what works, and they stay focused on what works. And multimodal composition is disarming in some ways, because it makes one get a little bit out of their comfort zone.
I think a primary challenge for us in the faculty or instructor positions at colleges with multimodality is our own fear of the learning curve. I had two teenagers who are both now college students, and again, they've grown up with this, and it's very, it rolls off of their fingers and off their head. It's more intuitive for them, so it was very challenging for me, felt challenging to get started with it, because again, we don't like feeling stupid. We don't like feeling like we don't know. We got PhDs, we got into the profession, we're experts at what we do. So it puts you in a very humble and difficult place.
Get on up, get on up, get up, get on up.
We've all been or will be in this position where we need to get re-energized. We've been doing the same thing for 10 years, and we just need something to kind of kick us out of our comfortable place. You have to start somewhere, and you have to start small.
If we sort of reduce our expectations and we wean ourselves from the idea of something that's dramatic, I think we'd find that multimodal is very simple to implement. And we can start small, we can stay small, and still be effective.
Keep assignments and tasks small and doable.
Let's do one very small thing, let's do it exceptionally well, and let's think about then how it changed your students and how it changed your teaching.
Can we hear it like that one more time? One more.